Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Becoming Anchored podcast. My name is Laura Deneen. I'm your host for today's episode, and I am super excited for the content today. If you're new to this platform, we really are about helping you move towards peace with your body. And so body image is a complex topic, and we really try our best to address it with nuance and care and tenderness for you. If you are local to Nashville, specifically the state of Tennessee, we would love to see you. Please reach out. And if not, we encourage you to reach out to someone local to you for therapy. Without further ado, I'd love to welcome Becky Mayer to the show today. Hi. Super excited to have Becky. She and I first met probably about 8-9 years ago now.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. When I was a master's level therapist at the Renfrew Center, and I'll let Becky share a little bit more about the work that she does. But today we are going to be talking about the role of nutrition therapy in improving body image symptoms. And so Becky is a dietitian. She's a wealth of knowledge in this area. So Becky, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your role at Renfrew and how nutrition therapy is intertwined with body image.
Yeah, so my role at Renfrew is I am Director of Outpatient Nutrition for the Renfrew Center. So I help to oversee the nutrition programming for the Renfrew Center across the nation. So it's been exciting to do that, but I have been there for 16 years. So I started as a dietitian working direct care with patients and never really left direct care. So I do carry a small caseload here and there. So yeah, and body image is so entwined with nutrition and just kind of how, to support with that. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so for those of you that aren't familiar with the Renfrew Center is essentially an amazing eating disorder treatment facility. And so it's where individuals may go should they need more support than a traditional outpatient level of care. So here at Anchored, we're an outpatient counseling center. Clients will typically start out with us weekly or biweekly, depending on schedule and all the things. But someone might go to an eating disorder treatment facility if they need more support.
Yeah, and Renfrew has been around for 40 years. They're celebrating that this year. So it was kind of the first residential eating disorder treatment center for those with an eating disorder. It started in Philadelphia. So now they have some outpatient sites that have a PHP and intensive outpatient program. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious. Let's break this down. So you're a dietitian, right? Yep. So the schooling that you get, right, you get extensive teaching and learning on the topic of nutrition, all that entails, right?
Yep. How food functions in the body, what is needed for health and wellness and overall well-being. So, just kind of how that interplays and connects to our bodies.
Absolutely. And so there is such an intersection, especially with body image symptomology and nutrition therapy. So when you think of, or when you hear the word nutrition or nutrition therapy, what does that essentially mean for you?
Yeah, for me, nutrition therapy is the act of counseling clients on the role of nutrition in their body, what carbohydrates, proteins, fats do for their body, as well as helping to untangle some of the myths and misperceptions that are out there around food. It's not uncommon for somebody to go to a doctor, have a medical diagnosis, and the doctor is like, hey, here's some foods to eliminate. And again, they start to eliminate it, which, sometimes are some of their favorite foods and things like that, and it kind of snowballs into something else. So working with them around how to reincorporate food and establish a different way of eating that supports their health and well-being and reduces that preoccupation with food sometimes whenever they've had that restrictive mindset.
Yeah, so 2 thoughts just on what you just shared. So number 1, this is a big problem within the medical space, right? I have a lot of respect for physicians, and I am so grateful for the care that they provide. And there is harm within that space, especially when someone maybe has a 15-minute appointment with a physician and then they get 2 to 5 minutes with their doctor. And what I have found clients have told me that have maybe been harmed within that space is that there is a lack of curiosity or even questions around their relationship to food.
Yeah.
Right? And so then, say someone has, for example, higher cholesterol, right? And then a doctor may say, like, hey, eliminate these foods. Tell me a little bit more about what you perceive is the problem within that.
Yeah, so whenever a doctor is like, hey, you have high cholesterol, here are some foods to eliminate, like don't eat carbohydrates or reduce your meat intake, that sort of thing. And then they're not spending any time asking, like, what are you currently eating? What do you have in your diet? They're missing a big piece of kind of that relationship with food that somebody may have, and then directing them to do something that they may already be doing.
Right.
Or suffering with. One of the things with eating disorders is that cholesterol levels can be high if there's a restrictive intake.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, again, they're maybe missing the boat of, like, what's really happening in that, like, food realm with them.
I remember learning that when I was actually going through my certified eating disorder specialist credential. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, like, oh my goodness. And that makes sense that gets missed. And yeah, I mean, there's a lack of oftentimes curiosity. And in physicians that I've spoken to that I think have that posture of, like, humility and ongoing learning, you know, one thing that I've shared is just even encouraging them to ask the question. You don't even have to do this, like, fancy assessment, but just ask the question of, like, hey, what is your relationship with food in your body? It's a non-shaming question. Yeah. And oftentimes you'll see almost like someone's shoulders, like, fall back and relax. And I think that clients who struggle with food in their body maybe aren't necessarily going to bring it up firsthand with a physician, but if someone asks, they might feel more comfortable to, like, share.
Yeah. That's a great way to open it up of, like, what's your relationship with food and your body, even around whenever they're getting weights, whenever they're getting blood pressure, whenever they're drawing blood, you know, that sort of thing. It's a different kind of way to ask that question, or before they give any recommendations, because I know a lot of times the lab's work comes back and then the doctor's like, hey, here's the, like, recommendation, and there's not any back and forth around that either of, like, how does this work? Yeah. And so oftentimes that leads to somebody looking for a dietitian too, to have some of that more nutrition therapy that's individualized to them, kind of looking at their overall relationship with food and how they are eating, how that impacts impacts their life.
Yeah, and I think it's scope of practice too, right? Like, you and I think you know a lot about therapy. I know a lot about nutrition therapy, and I'm not going to prescribe someone a meal plan, right? Now I know what's more appropriate or maybe not enough food or something like that if somebody's coming to me with an eating disorder. But I think just from my experience having doctors that refer out to dietitians versus prescribing something that maybe they really don't have enough training around, resisting the urge to make assumptions, like all of those things are just really important. Yeah. Circling back, you mentioned, some misconceptions that people have about food. Tell me a little bit more, like your top 3 or maybe top 5 that you've heard in your career.
Oh, I don't know if I can limit it to 5, but we'll go with, like, maybe the top ones that are kind of circulating now, or are, you know, like, we need to eat the superfoods or things like that have more nutrition than maybe something else, but those also may not be accessible to everybody. So the one more recently, well, it's not probably recent, but still on the radar, is acai berries, if I'm pronouncing that correct. You know, the bowls and things, making those fruit things. But again, they're purple, so you can get the same nutrients from blueberries that are probably more accessible, more cost benefit.
Cost effective?
Cost effective, yes. I was like, I can't think of the word, cost effective. Where, and then, let's see, carbohydrates are not what we need to be eating. We need to be eating more protein is kind of the common thing. I think if you walk in the grocery store, you'll see everything that's enhanced with protein. And our bodies actually don't need as much protein as maybe the social media world also says to us about protein. Those are 2 that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, there's so many more than 5. It's like, it's literally limitless. And what I think is so interesting and fascinating is that the supposed rules, and air quotations, right, if you're listening, but they change, right? So, like, this month it's this, next month it's that. And if someone is following this regimen, we just want to say, like, we have the utmost compassion. There's no shame for that. But it is pretty cyclical. Even some of the things, right, that we grew up with in, like, the 90s or early 2000s that are now coming back. Or And one other kind of rule that came to mind is like the delayed eating, so the
Yeah.
intermittent fasting.
Yes. Yeah.
That seems to be pretty popular. And again, it's cyclical. I remember this from like 3 years ago, and I've seen a couple things online that have like maybe returned to the intermittent fasting. Yeah.
And what's interesting about the intermittent fasting phase, well, air quotes for phase there, is that our body actually, when we're sleeping, it's a time of fast, and we're going at least like 8, depending on your sleep patterns, average of maybe 8 hours a night of possibly not having food, and that's appropriate. That's how our bodies were made. And so I think this intermittent fasting sometimes takes things to an extreme situation where it may limit socialization with friends, like going out to eat because it's not within your window of eating. Also, if you start eating foods and you've been fasting, you may feel bloated and things like that, which kind of impacts your body image around like, why would I want to go and eat if I'm bloated after I eat after a time of fasting?
Yeah, and then just even the emotional response around that, right? Like the possible shame or disgust or anger that someone might feel. And I find that quite common. Obviously, there's no two eating disorders or disordered eating experiences that are the same, but I do find it quite common for a lot of clients to be skipping breakfast and or lunch, to have that like delayed eating, almost like white knuckling through their day. Yeah. I'm sure you've seen that a lot in your career.
Yep. The restricting of breakfast or lunch, or having something small.
And maybe it's like not an appropriate meal.
Correct. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more. Okay, so this intersection of how nutrition therapy can actually support, someone in moving maybe towards more body peace, body acceptance. What first comes to mind when you think about that intersection?
Yeah, whenever I think about that intersection, I think about eating consistently and nourishing your body with enough fuel. In the sense of if we're not getting enough fuel, our preoccupation around food goes up. We also are limiting, sometimes variety in that, minimizing like socialization and things like that. And so fueling your body enough consistently throughout the day, whether that's 3 meals and snacks mixed in, 5 meals. We'll put meals because some of them may be smaller, that sort of thing in the day, but just making sure you're getting enough and then increasing variety. And if we're doing that, a lot of times the preoccupation around food, around the body, decreases, coupled with the therapy aspect of things.
Yeah. And we were actually chatting right before we started recording, but Becky and I both have seen this time and time again, and you've been practicing longer than I have. And I don't know like what the like research like data is in my clinical work, but I have seen this time and time again, and even like clients self-report of like, oh my goodness, Laura, like I'm following my meal plan, or my dietitian says that I'm now eating enough and my body image has gotten better. And I've heard that so many times throughout my career. And so that can be also a tricky slope because that requires a lot of buy-in on the front end. And it can feel like a big ask for clients when they've maybe been eating a certain way for so long, and then now their dietitian is asking them to eat more consistently and more in terms of adequacy too.
And that, I think, when we think about nutrition therapy and how that may intersect is whenever somebody hasn't been fueling enough or consistently, whenever they do, body image distress sometimes goes up a little bit more because when we're not using our GI tract as it's made and designed, when we start eating food, our body starts digesting, kind of starts those movements throughout our body. It can become stagnant. And so then there's bloating, and then there's some GI disturbances and things like that can feel very disorienting to somebody who's been restricting. And that brings up a lot of fear around nourishing the body.
That makes a lot of sense.
So there's a little bit of, I think, a grace period to give your body grace to kind of move through that. And then the body image sometimes improves too once you kind of go through it. It gets a little bit worse because of the physical things that are happening.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Your body's not used to maybe this like newer meal plan or way of relating to food. What would you say to a client that's like, Becky, I'm just like so bloated. Are you sure this is not too much food for me? I'm sure you've gotten that question
that comes up quite a bit, almost every single day. If it doesn't, I'm kind of scratching my head, like, what is happening? And like, maybe this person is, aware of that and like kind of leaning into that a little bit more. I kind of validate that. Like, yeah, it makes sense that you're feeling more bloated, it feels uncomfortable. And what we know is like nourishing our body consistently, it will hopefully subside. And if not, we can kind of explore some things to help with that. Seeking medical support, some of those different things. But helping them to understand their body and listen to those cues, but also supporting them in like, we've got to kind of keep going and keep eating consistently.
Yeah. Well, and I think what we find with a lot of our clients is that a lot of times people have been in this for years, you know, and maybe it's like a more recent onset for some folks, but of course it's hard, right? Like you mentioned the validation, like I will start there too, like just validating, like, this is a lot, and I know it can feel so scary and painful, and I think what a lot of people need, and certainly what I needed in my own recovery, was like a soft place to land, of like somebody that literally was going to hold my hand through that process, and have that faith that my body is wise and does know what to do with the food.
Yep.
Because I think there's a lot of like skepticism, especially if you have been restricting or using other types of ED behaviors in the beginning. The bloating question or just even just the GI discomfort that does come up quite a bit. And then I think what can happen is then clients start getting in a place of like just spiraling with their thoughts about their body. So when someone is coming to you and they're telling you, so circling back to the preoccupation with food, tell me a little bit more about what that looks like from a nutrition therapy standpoint. That's my first question. And my second question is like how you might encourage someone around that.
Yeah, so whenever the food preoccupation is present, I will sometimes start exploring with them, what does that relationship really look like around food? Are there foods that they're limiting? Maybe they, quote unquote, like don't deem certain foods like safe, or there's fear foods that they're omitting. Or sometimes there's certain social situations that they are avoiding, and so that increases the food preoccupation as well, if we're kind of mental restriction and or physical restriction of certain foods. And so once kind of that's explored with them, kind of helping them to set some goals around that, like how can we start to kind of dip our toe into exploring the foods or the situations that maybe they're avoiding that kind of cause that food preoccupation around avoiding things or that sort of thing.
So what I'm hearing you say is just like really the importance of coaching clients on like leaning in. And we do a lot of that work here too, whether it's with somebody with an eating disorder or anxiety or a CD, right? But it's like, how do I approach this situation with tenderness, with compassion for myself, with the support that I need, instead of this pattern of avoidance that happens.
Yeah, and it can be helping them to scaffold it in, working with their therapist on like what skills do you have that you and your therapist have talked about, and then also how can we kind of scaffold some things in, like maybe it's purchasing the food or having the snack outside of like the quote unquote like time to eat or that sort of thing, because I think that's also hard too in that preoccupation whenever they may be hungry and it's not quote unquote time to eat, or it's not on my meal plan. And then that increases the preoccupation because somebody wanted something and it wasn't in their time. So
there's like a theme here of flexibility. I hear, and I think that is so true, whether it's with food or with our bodies, right? Like, because one day I might want to eat lunch at 11:30, and the next day I might not be able to eat until 1 p.m. So maybe I'm going to have like a more robust snack after breakfast that day. But the importance, I think, of flexibility with both food and with body is a piece of the overlap and a piece of that intersection. Yeah, it's helping to scaffold in some of that flexibility within their window of tolerance, and kind of helping the dietitian working with the therapist on like what does that look like for them, or even exploring that with the client too, because they are the ones that know their body, know their like capabilities for the most part, in the sense of like challenging something and readiness for that. Yeah, so there's like also an element here of like collaboration, right? Versus just like telling someone what they should or shouldn't eat. Which I think that is a misconception overall as far as like the role of a dietitian, right? And I certainly have heard that before referring to nutrition therapy of like, well, are they just going to like tell me what I should eat? And I'm like, thank you so much for sharing. And it's so much more than that. Yeah. I think that is a misperception. A lot of, if they've not worked with
somebody that's been eating disorder informed or even a therapist before or something like that, they come to you wanting you to tell them exactly what to eat and when to eat it and that sort of thing. And it's like, really, I'm going to work with you around that and really discovering what works for you and what maybe doesn't work for you in that relationship with food.
Yeah. And one thing that I heard you say as far as like the preoccupation goes and like missing out on those social experiences, we do see that quite frequently, right? Whether it's like a date night with your loved one or spouse or partner, or maybe it's like missing out on going to like a barbecue because there's fear of what type of food might be available there. And the reality is a preoccupation with both food and body tends to make our lives smaller.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do and what I hear you saying is like you're supporting clients in like going out and like living their lives and living these like amazing, beautiful, meaningful, wonderful lives. And food is a vehicle to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And if we have guilt, shame, disgust, all these other emotional experiences with food, that inevitably a lot of times does turn in some way, shape, or form towards our bodies. And so really figuring out how you can support clients towards just like living amazing lives.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that I see quite often is sometimes when you mention like the guilt, disgust, all those kind of negative connotations around like food and body and that sort of thing, is that sometimes we find clients that are also afraid of feeling happy whenever maybe they're having meals or experiences because grief is so present for them or sadness around something. And so whenever they're at a celebration or something, they're like, oh, I can't feel happy. And then that becomes also restrictive too. In that. So
yeah, it's complex, right? The experience of eating.
That's what I was gonna say. It's very complex and kind of no one is similar in their approach to recovery or body image or food. So
Yeah, or even just like accessing pleasure. You know, like my daughter and I, we went to Costco last week and we got like ice cream sandwiches, and so we've been eating them at night, and she loves it. She'll put her little PJs on and she'll ask for an ice cream sandwich. She can't quite like blend
the word
word yet. But it's just been such a sweet time of like watching her access like pleasure and joy with food. And she's almost 3, right? But I think a lot of times what happens is because we go through hardships or traumas or whatever, we sometimes lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Or like you talked about, like we believe that we're maybe not worthy of accessing pleasure or joy, or whether it's with like other people or with food or ourselves.
Yeah.
And so what I hear you saying is like you're helping clients like kind of find their way back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. To that 3-year-old, 5-year-old that had no worry about food or their body. Yeah. It's great whenever you can work with a client too that has a little bit of that like memory of like, I just remember whenever food was easy, or I didn't think about food all the time, and that is just so helpful to have. And not everybody has that, but it is helpful whenever they can kind of recognize a time in their life whenever it was that way and want to get back to that. And helping them with that is that flexibility, which is scary in and of itself, and compassion with themselves for kind of exploring what that relationship has looked like and where they want it to go.
Yeah. Do they want to be able to eat like ice cream sandwiches with their child? And a lot of times people will say yes to that question, right? Like, I want to be able to watch her little face when she's got like the chocolate chips all over it. And it's kind of a, it's like a little bit wide, so her little mouth when she's like trying to eat it, it's just precious. But a lot of times people will be like, yes, I want that back, or I want to be able to access that joy. Yeah, sweet. What would you say, just a couple of questions here for you. Someone is maybe starting to eat in like a newer or different way that maybe is more in line with what their body needs. And they express to you, which I think this question comes up all the time, like, hey, Becky, what if I start eating this and I gain weight? Or conversely, maybe they are on a nutrition rehabilitation meal plan and they do need to restore weight to help their bodies like function optimally. How do you address that as far as the body image piece?
That is hard. I think it really depends on maybe the person's age. I think about somebody who's an adolescent who we have growth charts, and we can kind of talk about like, hey, your body is designed to continue to mature and develop, and that piece. I also think about throughout the lifespan, our body's always changing, so kind of talking to them about that as well. But a lot of times it's bringing in the previous relationship with food and how restrictive it was, and how maybe it was suppressing their weight in a way that didn't bring, I don't want to say it didn't bring them comfort, but like was restricting their like socialization and things like that, and kind of really exploring that, like what was happening at this time in your life with behaviors and your relationship with your body, and where do you want that to go? And then kind of talking about the weight piece of like, is that something you really, yes, we really may fear that, but is that something that you want to kind of keep providing, I don't want to say rules, but like rules around that prevent you from living your life that you want to live?
Right. Yeah, I mean, two things that I'm hearing. I think that you just excel in leading with curiosity, right? Of just like, hey, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Versus like, you shouldn't want that, right?
Yeah, right.
Because that's just not going to be effective for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, yeah, like you're doing a lot of values work with clients around like, okay, if you've overemphasized the importance of weight, is there a way that we can like kind of back off that? If being at a different weight allows you to lead the life that you want to lead, and how can we like work through that together? And, you know, I know that you dip your toe in this regard, in this realm as well, but like as therapists, we are also doing that deeper work of like, it is about the weight and it's also not, right? A lot of times people are afraid that, okay, if I eat this way adequately and consistently with enough variety, maybe that will make me gain weight or lead to some sort of weight gain. And then the deeper kind of layer there oftentimes is like, I'm afraid that I won't be loved, or I won't belong, or I won't be accepted. Yeah. And so I think both of us kind of targeting some of those core fears together, both as the dietitian and the therapist, is really important as well.
I think it's coupled with the society we live in. It's very fat-phobic, for lack of a better term, in this moment of just what does that mean? And so that is also working with clients around that too. Like, what would it mean if your body changed? And like working with a therapist on like, how does that impact your core beliefs and things like that are present in this moment?
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And it's like, it makes a lot of sense that people have fears, right? Maybe they have been mocked or bullied or criticized for their body, or maybe they've overheard it over the years. And so it makes sense that like, it is almost safer to be in a thin body in our day and age, right? And I think just really just doing that wraparound piece around looking at our own weight stigma, whether that's like imposed onto ourselves or other people, it's so much like unlearning that has to happen, especially in the realm of like body and food. And you and I are both like doing that work.
And I think about there's the body image spectrum, but a lot of people think it needs to be like body acceptance, and we all live in a body, and we may not accept our body accept our body, but we may not like enjoy everything that's happening with our body day to day. You know, if you have a headache, that may not bring you like joy or pleasure in your day, but you kind of accept like, okay, my body is telling me something in this moment, and how do I move forward from that?
Right.
Other things. So.
Yeah, Becky, I learned this when I was at First. I know that you use this language, but it's like, how do I pursue like a recovery-oriented behavior or values-aligned behavior is other language I will use. Yeah. How do I care for myself? And it's interesting you mentioned the headache, because I have a history of migraines, and they've gotten a lot better over the years, but I had to do a lot of my own internal work, and that's also important, right? Of like being angry at my body for having a headache versus like, okay, this is here. How do I practice acceptance around that? And then how do I get my needs met in a supportive way? Yeah. Because I think it's really quite common for a lot of the people that we work with to feel a sense of like anger or even betrayal that their bodies are like letting them down or betraying them in some way, shape, or form. And so we're like healing some of those wounds as well. Yeah. Any other thoughts as far as the intersection of nutrition, body image?
I don't know if we have time for this, but I always think the question you just asked about somebody that may be on a weight restoration plan, I always think about those that come that are seeking weight loss, and it's again kind of having that, looking at like what messages have they received about their body, how can we kind of build in behaviors that also help to take care of their body and tend to their body in a compassionate way, and developing trust in their body too.
Yeah, because both ends of, both kind of pieces can be there for clients, right? Whether they do need to restore weight, or maybe they are coming to us and they're like, hey, help me lose weight. And for those of us that are, held at every size providers, that can just be it's a delicate conversation to navigate because we want to hear and understand our clients and help them feel seen and also provide them with appropriate psychoeducation. Have they had an eating disorder? Have they had trauma that's led them to like approach food in their body in some way? So yeah, I hear that. It's nuanced. Yeah. And it's important to like address that all with care.
Yes.
Yeah. Becky, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a joy chatting with you.
It's been exciting. So yeah, talking about nutrition and body image and
yeah. I mean, these are certainly things that I just feel so thankful to have worked with an amazing dietitian around as well, and just the psychoeducation that I've received and some of that lineage that I hope to pass on to my little girl around her relationship with food and body, because a lot of it can be generational too. Yeah, I would love to have you back sometime soon.
All right, love to come back.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap, what homework or affirmation would you like to provide to our listeners today?
I think homework, and it can be kind of coupled with an affirmation, but homework of like, where can you find compassion in either your relationship with food or your body? And sometimes that can just be saying like, hey, I appreciate you, body, for helping me walk up the stairs today, or having the ability to enjoy this lunch with somebody that may be present. So just kind of finding ways to find that compassion.
So good. Yeah. And I will close with an affirmation. So something that's sticking out to me is just this idea that my body is deserving of adequate and consistent nutrition. Yeah. Thank you so much, Becky.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And thank you all for listening to the Becoming Anchored podcast. We'll see you next time. Take care.